Hello and welcome to the hustings for the Education Officer for 2020-21. We've asked your questions to the candidates and they've replied to us either with a video or a written statement. If people haven't provided anything, then unfortunately they've been unavailable and not able to contribute to this hustings. So with further ado, let's get into the questions. The first question is, in order to be prepared for life after university, students need to understand their employment rights. The Students' Union, by virtue of its very existence, recognises that there is power in a union. How will you encourage students to get thinking about their workplace rights beyond university? Do you think there is a need for a student union campaign on trade union membership? Will you engage with local trade union branches to champion this?
I believe it is incredibly important to ensure all students know and understand their rights and the benefits of unions in the best of times, especially now, however, during this pandemic when nurses and healthcare staff are being put at risk without proper PPE. It is especially important that our nursing and medical students know what their rights would be and what unions are there to support them in their future careers. I think that it would be incredibly beneficial to run workshops highlighting the importance and usefulness of unions. To do this, I would love to get local unions involved to talk about each of their unions and what they do. Unions are essential to protect workers' rights, and it is important that we as students learn about them, join them after university, and support them like so many did in the UCU's recent strike for better working conditions. People who are educated on their rights and protections are hard to exploit, and I believe we should be providing this education.
Hopefully, by achieving this, students will transition into university life and can find the time to be actively engaged with the union. By being actively involved with the union, I hope students will come to appreciate the value of collective work and organization and integrate such values when they transition into the professional life. It is important that students realize the importance of workers' rights, equality, and pay rights, and that the SU as a union supports any form of lawful protest. As a union officer, I will continue to lobby the university to ensure fair treatment and equal pay of staff members, therefore minimizing the impacts on students and setting an example of the importance of workplace rights. Stay safe and healthy, and vote AMNA for education.
Okay, so the first question I received is with regards to trade unions and how we're going to convey to students the importance of their representation by these collectives in the workplace, be that whether they're supporting themselves through university or in their later career progression after university. In a recent discussion, it was suggested that we have trade union representatives at careers fairs in order to convey to students what they offer and also the risks that they might come across in the working world. I also think as a student ambassador it would be important to have these representatives when we are targeting future students, as this is a good way to convey the importance from quite early on of such unions, and as well to set our university apart from others as not a commercial entity that only cares about its clientele while they're at university. We also care how they are treated outside of the university.
I think this is a solid question, and personally I also think that unions are important as ever because they essentially act as the backbone for employees of a workplace. Without unions, workplaces would literally be able to do whatever they want. For example, pay employees less than they actually deserve and get away with it. But unions such as the UCU and Unison help protect members of unions, and they do an amazing job at securing what these employees really deserve. So I honestly would say that we should, in the Students' Union, have a campaign to promote awareness of unions and maybe even introduce unions to the Students' Union to, for example, give talks at the university to help give students a better understanding of what unions do as well as what workplace rights you would have.
The Careers and Employability Service already offers such a wide range of services for students, such as CV check-in, one-to-one meetings, skills workshops, to name just a few, and this is a service I'd like to make visible and encourage students to use. The other thing that I'd want to implement is an employability week or fortnight. This is something I used to work at when I used to work at schools, which we would get everyone to think about their CVs, how to write cover letters, have mock interviews for people, because I know that's not something that everyone will have had experience of. We'd have guest speakers in, and I'd be encouraging schools and departments to have speakers in relevant to their area. So it might be someone that is a previous student, it could be someone from a local trade union working within that area, just to talk about employability and worker rights so that students are fully informed and make the best UON graduate and have the best employability when they leave us.
And the second question is, in some of your manifestos you wish to include more women roles in the SU, bridging the gender pay gap and decreasing strikes. How exactly do you intend to do this? In addition to this, I had thought the SU supported the worker strikes, so why would you want them to be stopped?
I believe that including more roles for women and other minority genders and removing the gender pay gap is necessary. While the payment of staff would not be directly under my role as education officer, however, I take an active part in ensuring and pushing toward the erasure of gender-biased wage inequality in the union. I think it is especially important to highlight that it is women of colour who are especially affected by this issue. The interaction between misogyny and racism, coined misogynoir by Moya Bailey, means the women of colour, especially black women, are affected by wage inequality the most. Whilst this is a wider societal issue, it is seen in the university itself, with women and female presenting of colour who are employed as lecturers by the university being the ones most likely to be the subject of the casualisation of contracts, as shown by the recent UCU strikes, and they are most at risk for their jobs, so were mostly unable to join the strikes. I believe that strike action is essential to fixing these problems and should only be stopped at such a time that these have some form of solution or remedy. I appreciate that many students have felt inconvenienced by these strikes, but I wish to remind students that the point of a strike is to be inconvenient to show that these workers are essential and deserve to be treated with respect, provided with good working conditions, and treated equally.
Okay, so the second question I don't think is necessarily addressed to me. It's addressed to people that have perhaps more virtue signalling manifesto points, such as women roles in the SU, gender pay gap, decreasing strikes. Personally, I believe that the strikes are a representation of the poor treatment of the university of their employees. It's not the responsibility of employees to bear this mistreatment without protesting. The only way to get the university to care is to affect the clientele, which is essentially us as students. But I believe it is the responsibility of the SU to collaborate or to have discussions with the administration of the university in representing also their employees, lecturers, tutors' rights, because ultimately, if they are happy and in a situation where they're being treated well, our education will only flourish from that. I think also with regards to women roles in the SU, I would work as a good role model. And as I was quite reluctant, as a occasionally anxious person, I was quite reluctant to get involved with the SU because very often it came across as quite cliquey and a closed group. But I think me breaking into this role shows to people that may think that it isn't their place to be in situations like this that they can and that they should put themselves out there.
I believe that every worker has the right to strike, just like a student has the right to education. But what I'm saying is that I don't want to block strikes because that is illegal. I want to come to a resolution with the university so that it doesn't get to the point of a strike where everyone loses out. With strikes, universities receive bad publicity in the news, workers don't get paid if they strike, and students don't get the education that they deserve because obviously they miss out on weeks and weeks of content. Someone DM'd me earlier saying that due to the strikes, they missed out on 8 weeks of lecture content, which is a lot. And strikes are used as a last resort when universities aren't listening to the demands of unions. So for it to have gotten to the last resort being used twice in an academic year says a lot about the University of Nottingham, and as education officer it would be my goal to ensure that it doesn't even get to the point of strike so that Staff are satisfied, for example, by bridging the gender pay gap. Students are happy because there aren't strikes that are going to be disrupting their education. And the university is happy because they don't make it into news. Should a strike go ahead, I will ensure that students are protected either way. And for example, if a strike goes ahead, I want to implement a policy such as extended deadlines for every week that strike goes.
So it'd be great to end and reduce strikes, but I don't want this to be done at detriment to people's pay disputes. It'd be great to bridge the gender pay gap. At the end of the day, there shouldn't be such a thing, in my opinion, but this is the world we live in. So I'd like to make sure that I'm working towards bridging that gap, but not at the detriment to student learning either. I think there needs to be more conversations happening. There's a very fine line that needs to be walked here between everything. And it's just going to be a case of keeping the conversations going and the communication channels open, making sure that students are supported, but also our staff who have the pay disputes are supported, and everyone is aware of what is going on. I think that's the problem. If people aren't aware, if people aren't informed, then that's where the breakdowns happen.
The third question is, will you campaign for timetables to be released earlier than they are? Releasing timetables at the beginning of term means that students that need to work or arrange childcare often have difficulties and end up missing large amounts of university. Several other universities receive timetables as early as July. Is this something that would be possible?
I think that the timetable should be released much further in advance, especially this past year. The handling of timetables was unacceptable, as many people didn't have their timetables in some cases until several weeks into the term. This meant that many people could not prepare easily. This includes those with children who have to arrange childcare, those who rely on having a job to be able to fund their time at university, for example those who are within the care system or those from lower income backgrounds, or disabled students who require knowledge of their timetable to plan vital doctor appointments and potential carer times. The lack of ability to plan for these things often mean that these groups miss out on university, and in some cases miss out on registration, which can mean they can miss out on their place at university. However, I would also like to point out that registered lectures should not be a part of university practice. The use of these is inherently ableist and archaic. Providing timetables earlier, or at least preventing the university from trialling new systems for timetabling at the start of the year, will allow everyone to be prepared for their university life and receive a good start to their education this year.
I believe that by enhancing the education network and reforming personal tutoring, students will get the support they need to transition into university life. With the impacts of COVID-19, students need clear signposting and services they can count on. This includes a timetable that caters for every student. Releasing timetables earlier and making student services more efficient is a priority. As students transition into being physically present on campus, we need to ensure their health and safety. That's why I will work on providing more study spaces and providing all essential readings in sufficient numbers and more accessible formats. With changing times, we need to adopt new measures to ensure everyone's safety. To minimize the impacts of COVID-19, I will lobby the university to be more transparent about funding and include students in deciding university spendings and to prioritize the essentials so students are not faced with unexpected fees or costs.
Okay, so the third question is regarding the release of timetables and how them being released so late can negatively impact students that, have to organise childcare, that have to work regularly, etc. I think that we would have to, it's definitely possible, I think we'd have to address both the university and the faculties in how they organise and how quickly they release this information, and also address the logistical problems of the university, as one of my points is regarding cleaning up Moodle and the IT services. I think if the IT service was of a better quality at the university, then these services would be able to be sent out much, much faster.
Listen, if other universities can do this, why can't the University of Nottingham? Therefore, I promise to you that if elected, I will make this my #1 priority, as during summer, I'll be honest with you, I don't have much to do. So I will make it the first thing that I do as education officer to ensure that timetables are released earlier than they are, so that students who need child care or need to work know exactly how they need to plan their time.
So timetabling is part of my manifesto. I would really love for timetables to be released earlier rather than later. I know as mature student officer this year, I had people contacting me because they were having issues regarding it, such as childcare, part-time work, travel, and I know that this is a university-wide problem. It's not just mature students. It causes problems for everyone. Even I had problems, and I'm not a parent, but I had to commute in, so there was issues there. So if elected, I'd be working with the university to see why we can't release these timetables earlier. If other universities do it, why are we not contacting them, seeing what it is their system that they use, how they're doing it, so that we can learn, because if we don't ask, we'll never know, and then we can't do it ourselves. So I think it's a case of working with others, seeing what there is possible, and trying to implement this early release of timetables, allowing students to be prepared for the semester ahead.
And the final question is, what have you learnt from the COVID-19 outbreak, and has this changed any of your views or policies?
One thing I personally have learned from the current health crisis is that the remote options that disabled students have been asking for all this time is possible when needed by the abled students also. The ability to attend seminars remotely through Microsoft Teams should continue to be an option for those who want or need it, along with some modules potentially being available entirely remotely. Furthermore, it has highlighted the importance of lecture to be a compulsory thing for lecturers, across the board something I intend to campaign for. I appreciate that for some, such as myself, distance learning is not something that is suitable for all. However, that does not mean that it shouldn't be available alongside in-person teaching. I also believe that the way extenuating circumstances are currently dealt with doesn't work, as you often need to obtain proof that it is difficult to get, especially when it is for mental health reasons. The lack of proof needed during the time of COVID is a good thing, however. I think that this needs to be better implemented into the process for general university practice too.
COVID-19 has impacted each and every one of us differently. The rules of the game have changed. If anything, it has prompted us all to reflect. Personally, it made me think of how I can employ my manifesto to ease the effects on students and make sure that no one is disadvantaged by the pandemic. So we need to prioritize. In such times, students need an education officer with a clear vision to deliver viable promises, not just compile a to-do list. I hope you can see that this is what my manifesto reflects, as I have outlined how to achieve every objective.
So the final question is regarding the COVID-19 outbreak. I think what this is illustrating to us is that we can't just respond to problems as they come. This causes turmoil in the university with people having to do dissertations and coursework all within the same week. We definitely have to pre-prepare for these situations and provide a concise and effective plan in dealing with eventualities that will inevitably occur.
If anything, it further supports my manifesto point that we need more support available for all students, because there have been memes going around about how during coronavirus, universities have not been supporting their students, and a lot of people feel this way. So I pledge, if elected as education officer, that more support is available to students, whether that be academic support, mental health support, or any other form of support. I pledge that this will be available to you if I'm elected as education officer. Support is more vital than ever, and COVID-19 has shown exactly how we as a university are lacking in support right now, but that can change by voting Mehel Khan as your next education officer.
So COVID-19 has been what everyone is referring to as an unprecedented situation, and it is, we can't lie. We don't really know what's going to happen, we don't know when we're coming out of lockdown, and we don't know what the rules are going to be when we come out. I think what I have learned is that it's made me realise how much more passionate I am about education. It's something that I've always been passionate about, and that if elected, I'm still going to bring that passion forward and make sure that people's education comes first. I think a lot of students have commented about how they haven't enjoyed the lack of communication from either their school, their department, or the university as a whole. So if elected, I would be pushing to open up that communication and make sure that all students are informed and are kept up to date with how they can progress through their course depending on the outcome and no matter the outcome of COVID-19. Thanks, everyone.
So that's it for the Education Officer Hustings. Thank you to our candidates for participating, and thank you to you for watching. You can view all of the manifestos on the SU website and vote until Monday at 1 p.m. Please go and do that if you haven't already, and make sure that you look out for our Hustings event, which is going to be around 7:30 on Monday, to see the results of who has won. Thanks very much for watching, and hope you have a good day.